Today on The Big Story, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam invokes emergency powers to ban masks at protests. Southeast Asia's internet economy soars past $138 billion. And hip hawkers putting their spin on traditional hawker favourites. Good evening and welcome to The Big Story. My name is Alyssa Wu and I'm coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. In a bid to quell escalating violence, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has invoked emergency powers, the first time in more than 50 years, to ban face masks. This was announced at a press conference a few hours ago.
As the current situation has clearly given rise to a state of serious public danger, the Chief Executive in Council decided at a special meeting this morning to invoke the power under the Emergency Regulations Ordinance and make a new regulation in the name of Prohibition on Face Covering Regulation, which is essentially an anti-mask law. It is essential for us to stop violence and restore calmness in society as soon as possible. We hope that the new legislation can help us to achieve this objective. This regulation targets rioters or those resort to violence. That's why the regulation contains defense and exemptions to cater for legitimate needs to wear a mask, and we believe that by so doing, we have struck the necessary balance.
So that was Carrie Lam. The ban on face masks will take effect at midnight on October 5th. Under emergency laws, authorities are allowed to make any regulations whatsoever in the public interest. To talk to us about this and the possible repercussions of the ban, we have Hong Kong correspondent Claire Huang on the line. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Ali.
To clarify, the ban on face masks is only for those who use it to hide their identity. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So you have got people like journalists or who have to cover the protest, or people with legitimate reasons to wear face masks, for example, students or people who are sick and they have conditions. So those are all exempted.
I understand. And for the face mask ban, what are the pros and cons of this decision?
Right from the start of the escalated protests in June, you have protesters who wore face masks. They still do, basically to hide their identities under the masks. So those who are not frontline or hardcore protesters typically have no issues under this, new law, I guess, to come into effect. You can call this a divide and conquer strategy. So basically now you will have the ones who are not radical to decide for themselves, to take a stand. And one possible outcome is that the turnout will shrink, which is exactly what the government wants. This allows the police officers to identify the radical ones and to go after the radical protesters easily. So the problem with this decision is that some people in the community say that this is a reflection that Hong Kong is now a state. And of course, the pan-democratic parties, lawmakers, have also asked whether this could prompt greater violence in the immediate, hours or days to come. And it's hard to enforce, in some sense, if everyone continues to take to the streets in the masks.
Now, I understand the press conference only happened a few hours ago, but what is the sentiment on the ground? Have you heard of anything yet?
So just ahead of the announcement that started at about 3 p.m., thousands, in office wear and with face masks gathered ahead of the announcement in Central to oppose the new law. So many of them were wearing surgical masks. They took to the streets on Central, and they chanted slogans, and they continued to ask for the 5 demands. On top of this, further protests have been planned for tonight. And including a march. It's a cheeky thing, right? And a march to ask people to wear Halloween masks and to sing in, 18 districts, in the malls and 18 districts. So we can expect them to probably wear masks
So what possible emergency measures do you think Hong Kong might enact?
Well, Ellie, Assistant Professor Eric Cheong of the University of Hong Kong, I spoke to him today, and he said that the problem with this. Problem with the move is that it sets very dangerous precedents because it passes all normal legislative process. So you don't have consultation, you don't have debate, there's no voting in council. And he said that this is worrying because it's also a very wide-ranging power is given to the chief executive in council, and this would include forfeiting one's property, imposing immigration controls, or imposing foreign exchange controls. But the Secretary for Finance, Paul Chan, has said earlier that they will not be imposing foreign exchange control.
Now, Claire, I have just one more question for you. Does the decision to invoke emergency powers show that the Hong Kong government is running out of options to control the situation?
Actually, not quite true. They have been using a kid's glove on protesters. If they want to, they can, enact a lot more laws, and they have other tools in their toolbox, so to speak. Okay, for example, Hong Kong is part of China. So what can they do? They can seek help from China, right? So far they have refrained from deploying lethal weapons until over the weekend, right? Where the 18-year-old was shot. But they have basically, if you compare to other countries, like in the West, they would have used the guns, very early on in the entire protest. So. The government can deploy more lethal weapons. They can ask for help, and I think under the regulations, like Mrs. Lam has shown today, they still have some tools in their toolbox.
Thank you so much, Claire, for the answers. So that was Claire, our Hong Kong correspondent. Please stay tuned to our website for the latest news on the Hong Kong protests.